The first thing I did was become an atheist. God sent 2 bears to kill 42 children. In the Bible, he never says he's the son of God. He says he's the son of man. The only reason he's called Yahweh is because it looked like a Roman acronym. His actual name is Adonai.
What's up, guys? This is a really amazing conversation that we got to have. This guy's name is John Davis. He runs 2 YouTube channels, John of New and The Recovering Catholic. And the reason that we got in touch with John is because Austin and we always like to talk about this concept where we should be able to hold anything up in our hands and look at it and inspect it and turn it around and turn it upside down and poke it and prod it. And you should be able to, as a human, you should be able to objectively just look at something. And you don't have to believe in it. You don't have to not believe in it. But we think that there's value in inspecting things. And usually if you can't inspect something, if you get uncomfortable when something gets held up and starts getting questions asked about it, I call those sacred cows. And usually those are sacred cows in your life or my life that you don't really want to talk about, or you're not allowed to look at it and turn it over. And I kind of think you're not supposed to have any sacred cows in your life, or at least it's better if you can identify them and maybe work through not being that way. At least for me, that's where I've seen the advantage. So one of the ideas that we talk about a lot is reincarnation. And if you're a practicing Christian or an American for the most part, you probably don't think reincarnation is real. And maybe you do, but you also have to acknowledge that there's probably 2 billion people in the world that do believe that it's real. And and have believed it's real for thousands of years. And so it's a really fascinating subject. So John Davis, he believes that he is the reincarnation of John the Apostle. And he has memories of playing with Jesus. Jeshua is what he calls him. And so he has his own sort of story to tell. And, what I like about him, I've watched his YouTube channel for a while, is he also, like I saw one where he said that he knows, right? Like everybody always thinks in this reincarnation space, like I was Cleopatra or I was John the Apostle. And there's like 50 people that think they were Cleopatra and 200 people that think they were John the Apostle. And so like what he doesn't think is that he's like special and he's this one thing. In fact, he actually thinks that there's probably some global one source. And for some reason, there's these pivotal people in history. And as we reincarnate, then maybe sometimes you identify with these pivotal people, because no one ever reincarnates and was like, yeah, I was a peasant, or I was just a soldier who died in the war. No, a nameless, faceless soldier. We all seem to be these famous people. But that doesn't, so there's no pride in him for that. He knows there's other people and so he thinks that maybe it's like we're tapping into it because, we're all one source or that's sort of the way he looks at it. So I just wanted to talk to him and give him room to breathe and speak and then just ask him questions about it. So, if you're a practicing Christian, we're probably going to touch on some things that you maybe have never thought about, but I would just encourage you to hold it up and look at it, and you don't have to believe in it. Or you can, it's whatever. Everything is optional here. But I really enjoyed this conversation with him. He's such a nice guy. He tells great stories. He's funny. He was a motivational speaker before he became John of New. And we go into his timeline because I really wanted to know, like, how did you figure out that you were John the Apostle? And he has wild stories. I mean, he's going to say that he went to 19 different psychics independently, and they all told him he was John the Apostle. And so he's either lying or it happened, right? I don't know. And anyways, it was just such a fascinating conversation. So I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. This is John Davis on the Austin and Matt podcast. Thanks for listening.
John, welcome to the show.
Well, I'm so happy to be here, guys. Thank you for asking me.
You were just talking about Highlander. I wanted to hear about that. That sounds really cool.
The Highlander movie, in life, we all need to aim big. We need to choose, don't be limited by what the world's going to give us. And the Highlander movie is a fascinating movie because when it's one of my favorite movies of all time. I love that movie. And when it was originally written, it was written by a college student as a project for a grade. And what happened was a couple of guys came to the college looking for scripts to mine for Hollywood. And they found this script. They thought it was interesting. They thought it'd be a fine B movie somewhere, right? And they pulled it out and they told the kid that he would make, I forget what it was. It was like $1,000 and then like a percentage of the budget when it goes. Not thinking it would ever go into anything big, right?
Right.
So now they have the script in the hand, and they're like, a Scottish actor. Who's the most famous Scottish actor in the world? Sean Connery.
Sean Connery.
Of course.
Right? So they went to Sean Connery and they said, we want you to be the Highlander. And he says, no, I want to, don't be the Highlander. He says,
He's that in a perfect accent as well.
right. He says, actually, I'll share something in a second. He says, I don't want to be the Highlander. I want to be Ramirez, which made no sense at all. But he liked that character better. It was also less work and much more money for him. So now these guys have this script with Sean Connery attached. And they're like, okay, how do I market this? How do I get the European market to be interested in this film? Who's the most famous European actor right now? Christopher Lambert had just finished Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan, and he was so they said, let's ask him. So they'll go to him and they say, we have the script with Sean Connery attached. He says, Sean Connery's in it? I am in.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
Right.
Yeah, the
So
party's
now they've got Sean Connery and they've got Christopher. The script, the budget is going up and up and up. And Hollywood's getting really excited.
Incredible.
And they decide. Then they want to cast the villain and the Kurgan character, and they went to Arnold Schwarzenegger. And Arnold Schwarzenegger's like, no, I just did the Terminator. I don't want to do that, right? So they said, oh, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And the guy who was actually the director was only known at the time for doing music videos. And so he wasn't a known guy. He was just a guy who did music videos. He said, well, I just worked on a music video with Sting about Frankenstein. And there's this guy, Clancy Brown, who was the monster. I think he might be a good shot, but he's a complete no-name, right? So they interview him. They screen test him. They discover that he's great, right? But they don't have to give him anything but a fee. And they don't give him any residuals. So he gets like $100,000 for doing the movie. He made nothing else from that movie. He was like,
wow,
parts of that film, right?
Wow.
But now we've got this movie that goes out. Christopher Lambert fans are getting it. Sean Connery's fans are getting it, and it ends up being a multi-million-dollar production. The college kid became a millionaire.
Oh yeah,
incredible.
Yeah. Big.
Yeah.
Gotta
So
ask.
when you're starting something, don't shoot for the moon. Shoot for the moon because nothing's impossible.
Yeah.
Oh,
Great advice.
That's awesome.
What a great way to start this episode. Yeah. Uplifting.
Yeah, I appreciate you being on here. I've been watching your videos for a few months actually, and really enjoying them.
Oh, you're the one. You're the one, huh?
Yeah. I see it. 111. Yeah, that's me. Yeah. And I just, I wanted to chat with you because I actually wanted to learn a little bit more about some of your background, kind of how you got to here. And that's. I mean, I've pieced it together, but I haven't found. I just wanted to ask you. I saw you the corporate action hero, and you had a prior life of doing that, and transitioning between those two seems interesting, and I would love to hear a little bit more about that.
Well, I'll give you. It's funny you're asking this because this morning I was literally writing the script for my life story video. So
cool.
So perfect time.
I was going to ask if you were going to write a book actually too. I
have a book coming out. I have a book coming out before Christmas this year called The Recovering Catholic's Guide to Spirituality.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And
makes sense.
And then I have another book next year coming out about my life called I, John.
Okay.
And so it'll be coming out later on. But let's talk about my weird life, okay? Because I have a really weird life.
Yeah.
I was raised in a good Catholic family, number 6 of 7. They stopped naming after 4. I mean, when I say a Catholic family, my mom had her master's degree in liturgy. She was head of liturgical doctrine in my Catholic church. And that means that when the priest wants to do a sermon, he has to pass it by my mom. And she says, yes, Father, you can do it. Go kiss the ring. Go.
You were really Catholic. Yeah, right.
Really Catholic. Right. And Catholicism didn't work out real well for me because the fear, the anxiety, the stresses, it really gave me self-worth, self-doubt, and a lot of other issues that I had to overcome later in life. And I did. Well, when I turned 18, my mom this is the most amazing thing that woman could have said to me. She said, John, spirituality is a personal journey. Go find what you believe.
Wow. That's amazing.
She let me go. And I know you probably can't see in the background behind me here, a picture of my mom is up there on that shelf. Behind her, there's a green light, and that's because she gave me the green light.
Oh, that's awesome.
So,
That's amazing,
um,
actually.
so with her
Right.
background, head of liturgical doctrine in the Catholic Church, to say, "Go find what you believe." I think that was the most beautiful, loving thing she could have done for me.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
So I went and I started studying everything. And the first thing I did was become an atheist because I wanted to sleep in on Sundays. Um, um, right. But
Okay. Yeah.
found out very quickly when you're an atheist, you are a victim to the news cycle. You don't have a faith and a belief of something could be greater or better. You're just literally living in stimulus.
Mm.
And for me, it led to depression.
Were you curious? I mean, because it seems to me there must have been some inherent curiosity of what is truth, what is life, what is this whole thing? Because I think
Well,
some people at 18, your mom says, go study your own spirituality, and you would do nothing with spirituality, and you would just go pursue something else in that sort of way. So
well,
was that always
that's
in
why
there?
that's why I became an atheist, because I was like, I'm done with this religion stuff, right?
Okay.
Yeah,
But
just letting
after a
go.
couple of years, it was like I was like, I'm depressed, right?
It wasn't going well, basically.
Wasn't going well. So then I started just saying, okay, is there something else? And people started. My sister Patty, who I just love and adore, she was very much like a she was like a 1970s hippie, right? She was very much into peace and love and all that. And I literally, she started like saying things to me and talking to me about things, and it never really sunk in. But I eventually shifted from atheism to agnosticism. I became an agnostic. I believe there's something greater than me, but I don't know what it is, and I'm not vain enough to say what it is. So then I was like, in that I was going along, and I just started talking to people and getting their different points of views on things. And I studied Buddhism and Hinduism and Baha'i, which is a lovely faith. Um, and I just dove into a whole bunch of different ideologies. And one day I used to do a comedy sword fighting show called Hack and Slash, and it was at Renaissance festivals all over the world.
You
Um,
did?
I
Casually.
Yeah, casual, yeah. When I left college, I went on the road of doing Renaissance festivals. It was a Hack and Slash show. And that show got really popular. I was at Renaissance festivals all over the country and doing really well. And when 2001, when there was the attacks on New York, um, that day I was asked. Well, I'm sorry, not that day. 2 days earlier, I was asked to do our Hack and Slash show for the USO, and so I ended up doing 6 USO tours.
What's the
Whoa.
USO?
I'm sorry.
What's the USO? Sorry.
United Services Organization. It's the organization that sends entertainment to soldiers overseas.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Oh, yeah, like
Bob Hope is the most famous
yeah,
USO guy, right?
yeah. All sorts of
Mm.
people did that. That's right.
Yeah.
So you
So
were
I
out there
went
as well.
2001 to 2006. I was on the front lines of Iraq, Afghanistan, and 14 other countries, entertaining soldiers overseas
With Hack and
um,
Slash?
with Hack and Slash.
Incredible.
Yeah. And you know what? The soldiers are brave, and I commend them for what they do. But I stood in Iraq wearing a pair of tights. Thank you very much.
True artist.
That's right.
Not only artist, but brave, man.
Yeah, brave.
artist.
That's
Go to a
right.
front line in tights. You're crazy.
Come on, artist. Yeah.
But yeah, I was doing my Hack and Slash show, and I was traveling all over, and I found myself in Canada at a festival up there. It was a short-term festival. It only lasted a year or two, but I was up there performing, and I was staying at a friend's house, and a party is going on. I'm just kind of sitting back in the room. And at this point, I was really into just watching people and see how they interact. For some reason, that's just who I was. And I'm watching, and I keep seeing this woman looking at me from across the room. And I know she's sitting right next to her husband, so I know it's not an attraction thing. So I'm like, she stands up, she runs across the room. She says, you walked with Jesus, right? And I said, okay, but excuse me? Right.
Nice to meet
Right.
you.
Wow.
And I was like, what are you talking about? And she was like, she says, yeah, you've got big things to do in this lifetime, and you walked with Jesus. And she says, don't you know that? And the weirdest part about it for me was the words fell out of my mouth. Yes, I did. Now, I never, as a coming up Catholic kind of guy coming through all that, I didn't believe in reincarnation at that point.
Right.
I had no, but somehow, intuitively, I knew that was something that was there. I don't know what it was about, right? So I immediately went, "What am I saying? I'm crazy. I'm out of here," and I left. Right? And I was
You
like,
didn't talk to her any, like, did you ask any follow-up questions? Kind of like,
I didn't until
oh, okay.
I left that show in Canada. I went to Maryland, and I backed in. I set my trailer up, and about an hour later, this big RV pulls in and backs in right across from me, and it's her and her husband.
No way.
Now she's directly across from me at the next show I'm at, right? So I said, okay, let's. I started asking people, who is this person? They're like, yeah, she's a psychic, and she does this, that, and I was like, psychic? Oh, no psychic,
Yeah.
no psychics, no one's psychic.
Yeah.
But I said, okay, well, let's have the experience. Let's do a psychic reading with her, right? So I sit down with her, and out of her.
What was your mindset? Were you kind of skeptical? Like what?
Yeah, my
Have you ever
mindset
had
was
a reading before? This is your first time you've ever had one, and you're like, let's see what it's about, kind of thing.
right. Never had a reading, but my plan was to debunk it.
Yeah, sure.
My plan was to get this crap out of here and just keep on going on with my life. She sits down. Suddenly, this calm comes over her. She says, "John of old, John of new, I love you. I've always loved you. I will always love you. I'm with you. I've always been with you. I always will be with you." And I'm like, I don't know about. And then she says, "Do you see me?" And I say, "No." And she says, "Take my hands and see." And I'm like, I grabbed her hands, and I swear to you this happened. It was like my face was sitting in the sand on a beach. We were sitting in my trailer, right? It was like my face was in, and I raised my head up, and I'm looking at the sand. I'm watching stuff fall from me, and I'm looking at the back of my hands in front of me. And I look up a little bit, and right here are a pair of feet. And I look up further, looking down at me is that guy, right? Who's laughing at me. And it was Jeshua, who I call Jeshua ben Joseph, better known as Jesus, the son of Joseph. And I had a uniquely profound experience that was beyond where I was.
Whoa.
I immediately, yeah, it was.
Are your eyes closed? You're grabbing her hands. Your eyes are closed.
My eyes are closed. Yeah. My eyes are closed, and I'm seeing all this.
And so this is a vision. Would you say it's a vision, or were you transported? Was it visceral? Do you think you could smell the sand and everything, or was you seeing it like what was that like?
Completely visceral. Completely visceral.
Wow.
It was like I was literally there in that moment. That's what blew my mind, because you can have imagination, but to add smells and sounds and wind, feeling the wind, that to me was huge, right? I immediately said, "I'm out of here. Go on, leaving."
Yeah.
That scared you. Fear was the first reaction. Like, what the hell was that?
What was the feeling when you were transported? What was the feeling you got when you saw Jeshua the first time?
Shocking, number one, but it was complete awe.
And what was the expression on his face?
He was laughing at me.
Oh, right.
He was I mean, laughing at me.
Yeah.
right. And I'll explain what this moment was later, because I actually had the full remembrance of that moment with more clarity much later. So I'll come back to it.
Okay.
So I'm like, no, I'm not doing that, and I go about my life, right?
So you cut the reading. You let go of her hands, and you're kind of like,
we did the whole reading. We did the whole thing.
Okay.
Right. And I said, "Thank you," and we went on our merry way.
Okay.
And I was like, no, not doing this. Not doing this. This is no. I don't want to be the guy who thinks he's Napoleon. Not like this is wild. So I go up, and I'm working at the Maryland Renaissance Festival. And I sit down with a very good friend of mine who I've known for 20 years. And, she was a professional mime, so I know weird people, by the way.
That's incredible.
Right. And I'm
What a
talking with
secret
her.
there. Just joking.
Yeah. Well, if a mime is cutting down a tree in the forest and the tree falls backwards and lands on the mime, does anyone care? Anyway, the classic mime joke. So I'm sitting here, I'm talking to her, and I'm like, "So what's been going on with your year?" And we're just talking. What's going on with your family? Out of the middle of the thing, she suddenly says, "You were John the Beloved, right?" This person I've known for 20 years now says this out of the blue, and I'm like, right. Then another one said
How
it.
long did they know? Were you like, how did you know this? Where like
It was coming out in the moment. It was
okay.
coming out in the moment, right?
They didn't know that they were gonna say it either.
We never
were
thought about it until that moment. She got that
fans.
information at that moment, and
Yeah.
Wow.
very clear. So then another one said it, and the way that one happened, I was walking along at a holistic festival. A friend of mine was selling jewelry at a holistic festival. And I was walking past the row with the readers, and a lady stopped a reading, ran out and grabbed me by the arm and says, "You're John the Beloved, right?" Right. So, and then I had 19 psychics in a row tell me the exact same thing. One of them, I found out that she had read for a guy named Nick Bunick, who remembered being the Apostle Paul. And there's a book about him called The Messengers.
Okay.
And I found out who one of his readers was. I said, if I'm going to call her, and I'm going to see what she gets without telling her who I am, right? I called up to set the appointment. I said, "Yeah, I'd like to set up an appointment." She said, "Oh my God, you're John the Beloved."
No
Right?
way.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I had 19 psychics tell me spontaneously like that, right? Finally, I was like,
Over a period of how many months? How long were those 19 readings, you think, or the bulk of them?
5 months.
That's incredible.
Definitely less than a year, but
And was that those were a lot of them were initiated by you then eventually? Like, I mean, if I have a bunch of people coming up to me telling me the same message independently over and over, eventually I would start testing it. I go, well, let me call
Sure,
that guy
sure.
and let me call. And what do
Sure.
you say? You kind of
Yeah.
start playing with it a little bit, not playing with it, but investigating it.
I started towards the end. Probably half of them were completely spontaneous. They grabbed me and told me, and the other half were me going, "Okay, is this really true?" Right?
Mm.
And I would specifically make sure I'd find people who had no idea who I was.
Right.
My hack and slash show and all that stuff was pretty well known. So I was walking into weird places. Right. Finally, one night I was like, "I am done. I am completely done with this. I don't want to do this." Right.
You're still an agnostic at this stage?
Yeah, technically.
Yeah. What's the
Okay.
timeline? How
Yeah.
long is this after you're 18?
Oh my gosh, this happened much later. I was
Okay.
when this happened. I would say, well, let's see. My first regression was 1999, so it's 25 years ago.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
60, so this is closer to
Okay.
30 years old.
So you were pretty much an agnostic from like 20 to 30 for over a decade.
Yeah,
You were an agnostic.
I was agnostic and God curious.
Were you still reading and investigating like religion kind of?
Oh yeah, oh absolutely.
had that
I
curiosity
amassed a
going.
massive collection of books,
Mm.
and not only old age dogmas like Christianity and Judaism and Buddhism, Taoism, all that, but also Eckhart Tolle,
Yeah.
Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer. I was
Mhm.
studying everything I could find, right? And I discovered that spirituality is everywhere. It's in everything and everyone. And when you put yourself on one train track, you only see one view. But when you realize that you go above and you can see all the train tracks go to the same place, then you find universal truths in all of it. And to me, I was finding universal truths in all of it. But anyway, so 19 psychics, and finally I was like, "Damn it, I'm done. No more psychics. No more psychics." I said, "God, if you want me to have this information, you bring that information to me directly. I'm done with these other people telling me." Buddy of mine walks in the house. He hands me a book called Edgar Casey on the Millennium.
Oh,
You know who
shoot. Edgar Casey. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm reading this book. I get to page 32. John the Beloved will again be named John. That's what Edgar Casey said in 1943. So I'm like,
Wow.
crap. Crap, right? So I said, okay, I don't.
It's
He's
closing in
like,
on you. This is
it
closing
is
in on you. You can't run from
absolutely,
it.
absolutely. Finally, I was like, I don't want. Even Edgar Cayce is a psychic. I don't want a psychic. And I went and I found a certified doctor of hypnotherapy who did past life regressions. And I went in a week prior. This is the sign of a good real hypnotherapist. You go in a week prior. They give you a meditation. They guide you through a meditation. They record it. They send you home to train for a week with their voice. So I trained for a week with their voice, and I came back, and the most profound experience of my life happened next. Most profound experience of my life happened next. She regressed me to the life of John the Beloved Apostle. And it started out, it's kind of funny. So I'm opening my eyes, and first of all, I'm smelling fish. There's a pile of fish beside me and nets around me, right? And I'm working on, I'm actually repairing nets. I'm tying holes, right? And as I'm smelling this, I'm feeling this, the wind's blowing, and I turn, and there's a man standing beside me, and I just knew that was my father. But he had a like a really deformed back. His back was like hunched over, and I literally say, his back's bad. He can't do the work anymore, so I do it. Right. So it's like, okay, this is really unique. And we're just talking about moving fish to get fish up to how we're gonna get them up there and so on. Normal business stuff. I look down, my legs are bare. Now, let me explain something. I'm viscerally and physically feeling this like I'm standing there. But the conversation with the regressionist is the thoughts in my head. It's like we had literally shifted consciousness places, right? So I'm there, and I'm still consciously John Davis, and I'm looking down, looking at my bare legs. In my mind, I'm going, "Oh, good, I'm not an apostle, because apostles wear robes, right?"
Incredible.
And then, right, and then I found out later on that what I was wearing was called a fisher's coat. It was basically a Galilean one piece for fishermen to use when they were fishing, so that the robes wouldn't suck them under if they fell over.
Wow.
So I was actually more accurate towards an apostle than the robes would have been.
So you enter this, you go to hypnotherapist, you enter a state of hypnosis, and in that state, you're transported all the way to there, and you live this moment as if you're there right now.
I'm there. Yep. And the regressionist says, "What's the next most important moment?" And the next most important moment, I'm watching people run down the beach in front of me, like literally running. I'm like, I said, "People are running." And she says, "Where are they going?" And I said, "There's a crowd." She says, "What's in the crowd?" I said, "I don't know." She says, "What did you do?" She says, "Oh, well, I'm going." Right. And I walk over to this crowd. And as I get closer and closer to this crowd, I start to feel this pure love. I'm not even in the crowd yet. I'm feeling this feeling hitting me. And you hear me in my regression. I'm going, oh my God, you could feel him. Oh my God, you could feel him. This is what I'm saying, right? And if you there's a video on my YouTube channel, John of New, that's called 2 Moments from My Regression. And you hear this moment, and then you hear me witness him on the cross in the crucifixion. And I have a hard time listening to that because you hear me actually responding to him on being nailed to the cross. But,
It's visceral.
but yeah, horrible.
Yeah.
But I'm walking towards this crowd, and I'm feeling this pure love, and I kind of like push my way in, and I get in, and I see bad guy, right? I painted that painting about the regression was in October, and I painted that painting in January.
Okay.
From memory. So I get into the crowd, and he's standing there. I'm looking at him, and he looks at me with the strangest look. It's like he'd known me his whole life. Like it was like, "Oh, hey," And he kind of walks over, and he raises his hand up. He just pats it right on my chest. And John of old, that's how I refer to that character, John of old, had what a lot of people would have considered a near-death experience. He literally left the physical world
Hmm.
and went into pure love. And I witnessed it in my regression. And so how weird is that? Okay, we're talking
That's
about a weird,
incredible.
right?
That's very strange.
Very strange, because it's like, having a near-death experience inside of a past life regression.
Inside of hypnosis state, inside of
Yeah.
past life regression, and you have that.
And
Wow. And you lived it. You experienced it. You didn't just watch
Yeah.
it. You were like had the NDE.
Yeah. That's why this was the most impactful moment of my life, because I not only had the experience of meeting Jeshua, but I also had the experience of crossing over and experiencing the pure love of God. Right.
That I was chatting with Austin recently, and I've been thinking a lot about Jesus and what it would have been like to be around him, because I think that a lot of times people think of Jesus and he seems magical and mystical because and anyone 2,000 years ago uh, is hard to envision anyone because you just think of it like a TV show or The Chosen or whatever it is, and but I thought thousands of people went to this guy and they had to have had an experience. Like you show up, couldn't have just been wise words. Like we've heard professors just give hour-long lectures, and you don't see all 1,000 or 100 kids get so excited that they have to like run out and tell all their families and friends. And I just thought, in this world, in my reality right now, what would have had to have happened that would make this many people just viscerally change their lives and run somewhere? And I've really tried to think about what would that have been like to be around Jesus in that situation, or Jeshua, in that situation.
That's a great way to take this conversation, because what happened next explains all that.
Oh,
It
interesting. Well,
literally
yeah.
explains all that.
Okay, great.
Because what happened next, I was in that experience, and the regressionist was just hearing me moan. I was just literally moaning because I was just feeling this pure love, this purity of love. And she says, "What's the next most important moment?" Well, again, right? And the next most important moment was feeling all my fears, my anxieties, my stresses, my separation from that feeling, from that love, from that God. And I'm watching Jeshua walk away over a hillside. And she says, what's going on? As I'm watching him walk away, she says, it was, I forget what she exactly asked, but I said, he gave me a glimpse of everything, and now I have to be with him. I have to go with him. You always wonder why an apostle or a person would walk away from their entire life.
Leave everything they have. Like that,
Right.
the response is so genuine. It couldn't have been faked, and it couldn't have just been. I've heard a million wise words. I've heard a million convincing arguments. I've heard a million things that are interesting and right or cool or whatever, and never have I been like, I have to leave every single thing that I had know in my life. I don't care about it anymore, and go this way. Like, what an incredible moment to be a part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And um, in that regard, one of the things that came out of the regression was that everything is love anyway. And the only reason we're feeling our fears and anxieties and stresses is so that we can come to know love more fully. Because you could never know love without knowing its opposite, without knowing the baseline to measure against. It's like living in a purely white world without ever seeing another color. You can never give white a description,
Right.
because you have no other balance. And then, the Buddha says the secret to enlightenment is the eradication of fear. And the Sufis say God's on one side of a veil and we're on the other side of the veil, and our life is the struggle against the veil, and the veil is our fear. And the Bible says, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil. Right. So it's all about this world being a place of overcoming our fears and anxieties and bringing the kingdom of heaven to earth, or bringing nirvana here, however you want to say it. It's a matter of releasing our fears and coming back to pure love.
What was it about uh Jesus, Jeshua? How does he do that? How does someone just get how does he get to just put his hands on someone's chest and know you forever, and you're just boom, like you're done. You didn't It's almost like you didn't have a choice. Anybody, he could do it to anybody. How does someone do that?
And I don't think it was the hand that did it.
No, I just mean the whole experience. I don't think it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but how does one person have that?
Have you ever been at a party and someone walks in who's just so amazingly charismatic? You just spot them and you know them.
Yeah.
That's a person who has less fear than you.
they're comfortable in their own skin, maybe another way of saying it, and so they're just there's
No,
yeah,
they
okay.
have no fear. And Jeshua had no fear.
Mm,
And Buddha had no fear, and Krishna had no fear, and Muhammad
mhm.
had no fear, and Baha'u'llah had no fear. All the
And
avatars of all. And they
we
all
can
they
feel that. When someone has
yeah.
no fear, we can feel that they have no fear. Everyone, or everyone, most people, whatever, they can feel that.
Right.
It affects
But
you.
in the Gospel of John literally says perfect love drives out fear. Right. So
Mm,
he's literally, he is being the essence of pure love. And and it's visceral. That's why that person walks in the party. You can feel their presence when they walk in. They own the room. You hear that
right.
term. They own the room. He had that to the nth degree, right? And you could literally feel it, right? Now, he also was a man, and he was a man who found this within himself and was showing us how to find it within ourselves. And that's where the schism of Christianity and I fall away from each other. As
Mm,
Christianity makes him the Messiah and the only one and the only way to God. And if you look at the world of Christianity today, it's fascinating because 30% of the world identifies Christian. 30%. Of that 30%, less than half of them are practicing. By far, less than half. Right?
sure.
So now we're at 85% of the people don't believe the 100% Christianity, right? But that 15% that are left are the most vicious, viscerally mad people
Mm,
that you'll ever meet. I have been doing this work since 1999, basically 2000, right? I've never had a Buddhist say a harsh word, a Hindu say a harsh word, a Baha'i say a harsh, an agnostic say a harsh word, an atheist say a harsh word. But I'm called the Antichrist and the devil almost every day,
mm.
and never by
Not your
anyone.
own corner. Yeah.
Yeah. and
That's
and
wild.
the main reason is because they are the only faith that have said that he's the only way.
You know, one of the things that makes me think of is, I mean, it's said so many times in the Bible that Jesus didn't want to be worshipped. Like he went into the city on a donkey and he washed his disciples' feet, and I think what I think a
Greater
lot of
works than I have done, you will
you will
do.
do, and I think a lot of Christians think that he did that fake humbly. Like, I'm actually the son of God, but I'm gonna sneak in on this donkey. But we all know I'm really the son of God. And so, but I've actually just thought, what if he was genuine? What if he was like, stop, like I'm trying to sneak in here because it really isn't about me, and he really means it's not about me. Do not worship me. I'm trying to sneak in here to help everybody, or whatever. And if what if those actions were actually genuine, and he's saying, don't worship me. This is not
Well,
about me.
in the Bible, he never says he's the son of God. He says he's the son of man.
Right. And a lot of times
Well,
they're like, are you the Messiah? He says, who do you
you're
say
the
I
son of
am?
man. You're
He's
a son of man. You're a son of man.
he's
He's
pretty
repeating it
cryptic
too.
sometimes. Yeah, that's right. Or
He's
yeah, right.
he's actually not cryptic. They're saying he's
Mm.
cryptic, right?
Yeah, sure.
Christianity is a negotiation with ancient texts because
Mm.
even you look at the Old Testament, it never mentions Jesus. But Christians
Right.
will say, well, that prophecy is about Jesus and that prophecy about Jesus. And the Jews say, no, it's not. What are you talking about?
Right. There's
Right?
discrepancies. Yeah,
Right.
right. Of the different groups. Yeah.
Right. And then you get into Islam, and that's even more fascinating because they don't think he was the son of God. They think he was the prophet before Muhammad.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like they totally respect him. They think he's coming back to all the stuff they said. The Muslims also say all Jews, Christians, and Muslims are all going to heaven because they're all praying to the same God, right? Then you get to the Baha'i faith, which is a beautiful faith, beautiful faith. They believe Baha'u'llah was the prophet after Muhammad. So they have this Abrahamic line. And so it's really interesting. It's only the Christians who say he's the only way, and it's only the Christians who judge the rest of the world that way. And
Mm.
and if you want to think about it from I know beautiful, loving Christian people. My mom was one, right? Obviously, right? I think there's beautiful people in all faiths.
Of course.
When my mom went to my mom went to her Irish Catholic priest, and she says, "Father, I'm concerned. My son thinks he's a reincarnated apostle." And her Irish Catholic priest, and I mean Irish Catholic priest, red hair, parted down the middle, wire rim glasses, whole bit. She says, "Father, I'm concerned. He thinks he's a reincarnated apostle." The priest went, Don't discount it. It might be true.
Dang.
Right?
No way.
Don't
Wow, that's
discount it.
amazing.
Yeah, I think there are beautiful people in all religions and all faiths. And I think that when we recognize that, we actually find a closer connection to God, because God is everything. That train analogy I used earlier, all the trains are going to the same places. And when you step back and you look at all of the ancient texts from all of the different perspectives, you find several universal truths. One of them being that love is God. Number two, that our thoughts are creating our experience.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big one, because
It
but the
takes a
Bible
while.
says,
If you don't know that,
Bible-
it takes a while.
well, the Bible literally says, when you pray, believe you shall receive and you shall. Right? If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can ask a mountain to move if you have faith. Nothing's impossible for you. Whatever you ask in God's name is granted if you have faith. Right?
What do you think people, a question on that. What do you think people think when they read that and they go, well, I prayed for this mountain to move and it did move, and I have faith.
Yeah,
Like,
but if you're Christian,
what would you do at that time?
But if you're Christian, your definition of faith and my definition of faith are completely different.
Yeah.
As a Christian, yours is faith in Jesus, and mine means faith is belief. And so people pray to Jesus hoping that it will happen, right? It's like the modern New Age guys do the affirmations, right?
Yep.
Now, I don't believe in affirmations at all, because the word affirmation means I'm shoring up something I have no confidence in. Why would you need to affirm it? If you're the creator of your experience, you declare things into your experience, right? And what happens with prayer, it's the same. There's an old Catholic joke. Bob goes to mass and he sticks his hands together and he says, "Dear God, please let me win the lottery." And a week goes by and he doesn't win the lottery. And the second week he goes, "Dear God, please, I've been a good Catholic my whole life. Please let me win the lottery." Doesn't happen. Third week comes back, "Dear God, I've been a good Catholic my whole life. When my wife died, I didn't lose faith. Please let me win the lottery." Voice comes down from heaven. "Bob, do me a favor, meet me halfway and buy a ticket."
There you go. Yeah, sure.
We are part of creation. The Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, the Buddha says, what you think you become, you create your world. The Bhagavad Gita says, thought by thought you forge your destiny. Therefore, to keep your mind on the positive rather than the negative is considered the austerity of the mind. All right. Descartes, the philosopher, said, "I think, therefore I am." Shakespeare said, "There's nothing good nor bad, but thinking makes it so." Right? Our thoughts are creative, and it's found everywhere. And what's also interesting is our present moment is the only moment of creation. And prayer and affirmation is praying for something ahead of himself rather than believing it's being received in the now. And so that's why they never get it, because
It's praying for a future state.
It's out of time, right? And we can't go to the store next Thursday right now. We can only go to the store right now. Right? We never leave the present moment. And the past is just a collection of present moment memories. And the future is just a place where we set goals for the next present moment. But we'll experience that in the present moment, because we never leave the present moment. So everything we do in creation, everything we do in prayer and affirmation has to be believed it's happening in the now for it to come to creation.
When you experienced the shedding of fear in the past regression, did that shedding of fear carry over into your day-to-day?
Yeah, that's I love that question, because I am far more fearless than I ever was in life. But to be here is to experience fears of some kind. So, to be in the physical, you can't be perfect. Right? So you come here and you experience the fears. And I honestly think that when you fully get rid of your fears, that's when you cross over and you go to the greater awareness of everything. Right?
Yeah.
The Buddha literally said the secret to enlightenment is the eradication of fear. Right? So it comes back to this idea that, what was the last thing Jeshua said? He said, love one another. Right? Just be the love. Be love. I think that's specifically why he's called John the Beloved, because the guy just kept saying, be love, be love, be love, be love. Right. So it comes down to, for me personally, I don't, the best way I could say this is be in the world, but not of it, from the Bible. Right. I'm here and I watch the world as this oneness, this non-duality. And I see people coming at me and calling me the Antichrist. And I recognize that's their fear, not mine. So it
Right.
doesn't I'm not attached to, because for me to be attached to it would literally be empowering it,
Yeah.
right?
You give it
And
your energy, you give it
yeah,
your attention. Yeah.
right.
It feeds
It's
it.
like Mother Teresa said, they asked her to go to an anti-war rally. She said, "No, have a pro-peace rally. I'll come."
Mm,
Because you focus on the anti-war, you're actually focused on war.
yeah.
All
That's
right.
good.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? And the thing in life is we all have that experience. So let me continue on with the life story now. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
All
No,
right. All
yeah.
right.
Sounds great.
So now I come out into the world and I'm speaking all over. I spoke at Edgar Casey's house in Virginia Beach. I mean I was out there doing the work, and I was traveling all over North America, and I kept coming back to the same places because they liked me, because when I speak, I'm funny, and I make it real, and I make it simple.
And you were already you were a speaker in a different profession, and so
Well,
you're
no,
very
not yet,
comfortable.
not yet.
Oh, you
Actually,
weren't
no,
corporate action hero yet.
not
Oh,
yet, not yet.
you did you've been a show. It feels like you've been
I,
in front of people
Hack
a
and
lot.
slash. I was in front of lots of people.
Yeah, a
So
lot, for a lot of
so
years.
so now I'm coming back to all the same locations, and people are coming back to see me again, but none of them are changing their lives. None of them are hearing what I'm teaching. They're only interested in my past life. So I decided I'm going to leave spiritual work altogether, and I'm going to take what I teach, and I'm going to wrap a different vocabulary around it. And I'm going to go into one place where I think they need more spirituality, which is the corporate world. And I created the corporate action hero. And I
Oh,
went in and teaching the same stuff, creation, goal setting and achievement, right? You just change the vocabulary around a little bit and build them up, and then give them an experience where they can understand that all the powers within them.
So when you were the corporate action hero, you had already had your regression, already remembered all of this, and you were living this out in not just, but a professional setting without that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I thought this came after that, but you
Yeah.
were actually just living life, living normal life, just being
I thought
doing your thing.
what I wanted to do was be like a spiritual spy. I wanted to I wanted to put people on a path, as opposed to, just preaching to the choir. My goal was to put people on a spiritual path, to start them looking for a spiritual path. And I was doing great, but I didn't feel authentic, because I was
Mm.
not being me. I was not telling my true story as it is. I was hiding my true story. And I did that. I was very successful doing that. I made good money doing that. My speeches, because of my hack and slash background,
Oh yeah.
my speeches had like nunchucks and bullwhips in them, and I was like, it was just crazy.
You could
One of the
incorporate some of the old material.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like the final thing I did on stage is I took the most timid person I could find in my audience, and using the techniques of fearlessness and purpose and altering your timeline, uh, I took that most timid person and took her in under 5 minutes, from never having touched a whip to cracking a whip and hitting targets out of my hand.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, which was amazing. And
I want to learn,
literally
man.
is managing.
Sounds awesome.
I could teach you that in minutes, because
Did you
it literally is. I did. I did.
You did.
I carried $1 million worth of insurance because of the whip. Yeah, I absolutely did.
I believe it.
But I was never hit, not once. Sorry. um, um, but what happened is I was really not feeling good about what I was doing, because I wasn't being me. I wasn't being myself. And COVID hit, which was the blessing of the world for me.
Mm.
Because guess what?
Okay.
Motivational speakers don't speak during COVID.
Oh my gosh, you got flattened. The business got flattened.
Flattened, because
Yeah.
you don't hire people to come talk into rooms with large numbers of people during COVID, right?
Right.
So I was like, oh, thank God. I
Oh,
was
it's a
also-
relief.
oh my God, I was traveling 70 days a year,
Oh.
and it was like,
It's a lot.
well, actually, no, I'm sorry. I had, the year before COVID, I had 70 events. I traveled over 200 days that year.
Oh, there you
Yeah.
go.
It was
That's a
crazy.
lot.
So I
That's
was
a
like,
lot of
holy,
travel.
I was like, holy smoke, this is terrible. So I was like, okay, I basically I asked my source, because the way I do it now is I set my fears aside and I just ask questions, and the thoughts pop into my head now, right? So I'm like, is it time
That's
to come back?
your
And
practice. You're
Yeah.
seeking those answers, and so you remove as much fear as you can and ask a question and wait.
Yeah, and just
Yeah.
listen, just listen.
Yeah.
And I was told flat out it was time to come back, right? And the next day I was invited to be interviewed on a channel called Intuitive View, which is a little tiny little spiritual channel.
Okay.
And I said, okay, if this is going to work, what are we going to do? I said, I'm going to open up a YouTube channel. I'm going to start a website, and I'm going to make a couple of videos. So there's a couple of videos on the channel. So when people come to the channel, they know that it's not just a fly by night, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I went out and did the interview. And the day before that interview, I had no subscribers. The next day I had 300.
Cool.
Right?
Incredible.
And I came back to the work. But the reason I went into the corporate work was specifically because the teachings are more important than the person. And which is why Jeshua went to the cross. The teachings were more important than the person. He sent John to Turkey. He sent Peter to Rome. He told James to stay in Jerusalem. He sent people all over the world for the teachings, and then took the headstone of the teachings that everyone thought was the Messiah or whatever out of the equation, so the
The
teachings
person.
could go on. Yeah,
Yeah. Right.
yeah. He was the spiritual rock star that everyone was looking at, and Rome, of course, thought, and the Jews as well, thought that getting rid of him, this whole little spiritual rebellion would be squashed, and it wasn't, because it got spread, and it took, it's taken a long time for us to come back out to this reality. But I think right now it's like over the past 20 years, Christian churches have lost 54% of their congregations.
It's existential for them.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
When they did the studies as to why people were leaving, the number one answer they got was freedom. People felt trapped by religion as opposed to being loving, caring.
Edified. Yeah.
Edified. Exactly. And so to me, so that's what happened next, right? So now I'm back out, I'm doing the work, and I'm like, okay, I start practicing what I preach, understanding that what I think I can create into my life. Now, what has it created into my life? I wanted world travel. I declared I was receiving world travel. I've been to 30 countries. I've been to 32 states. I've been inside the pyramids at Giza, on top of Machu Picchu. I swam the Blue Lagoons of Iceland. So on the front lines of Iraq and Afghanistan. I wanted to be in a movie with a major star. I was in a movie called California with Brad Pitt, David Duchovny, and Juliette Lewis.
Whoa. Sweet.
I wanted to be friends with and work with some of the top fight directors in the world, because I was a fight director. And
like choreographing fight scenes?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
My hack is less,
Yeah.
so it was a natural fit for that, right?
Yeah, sure.
So
Yeah, right.
I ended up becoming a teacher with the International Orders of the Sword and Pen, which is an organization that does the International Stage Combat Workshop up in Canada. And my friends did the choreography for Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Highlander, Batman Begins. I have a friend who's literally in Robin Hood Men in Tights. Thank you very much.
Hey, very well. Now we're getting to the real movies.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Yeah.
But the point of it is going back to that Highlander story we told earlier. Nothing's impossible, and you should never aim small. You should aim for what you want, big or small, whatever it is. You just declare it's happening. Believe it's coming into your experience, and it's going to come. I said earlier I spoke the ARE. Let me tell you the story about how that came to be. Right.
What's the ARE? Sorry.
The Association for Research and Enlightenment. That's the Edgar Cayce Foundation.
Oh, right.
Here we go.
Right.
Cool.
So they called me up out of the blue. They said, "Hey, we want you to come speak at Edgar Cayce's house." I told you I did that, right? And I was like, "Yes, I'll come right now if you want. I'll hop in the truck." I was so excited, man. I was all about it. And they said, "Can you come in 3 weeks?" I said, "Yes, I can." So I hung up the phone. Now, what they didn't know was that I 2 days earlier had been in a production of Shakespeare's Henry V, playing Exeter, and I'd been smacked in the mouth with a broadsword. And my front tooth was cracked in half.
No.
Now, I did not want to stand in Edgar Casey's house and, "Hi there, I'm John the Beloved. How are you?" I didn't want to be that guy, right? I literally said, "Thank you, God, for the perfect tooth I am receiving. Amen." And I ordered my submarine sandwich because once you ask, you have to let it go. Move on, right? Because it's present moment. I asked, I am receiving this, so it's definitely happening. So I'm going to get lunch, right? So
Yeah.
Okay.
I ordered a submarine sandwich from Jimmy John's. The sandwich came to my house. I turned my television on. I bit into that sandwich. The tooth broke the rest of the way off. Now, anybody else would have said, "Well, that didn't work."
That was the opposite.
Right. But I have faith. I said, "Oh, it's going to happen fast." Because I know that if something happened to my tooth after I declared I was receiving a perfect tooth, this had to be part of the process.
It's in motion. Yeah.
It comes in through the path of least resistance, right? So I said, I am receiving this perfect tooth. Tooth breaks off. 2 hours later, the phone rings. "Hi, John. This is Carol Black, the entertainment director of the Florida Renaissance Festival. How are you?" I said, "Well, honestly, Carol, my tooth just broke off." She says, "That's really weird. You'd say that to me today, John." I go, "Why?" She says, "This morning I became president of the Rescue Foundation." I said, "I don't know what the Rescue Foundation is." "What's the Rescue Foundation?" "It's an organization that helps Renaissance Festival entertainers get medical and dental work done for free."
No way.
Oh my gosh.
And she overnighted me a check.
No way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible.
So the thing is
Incredible.
understanding that even the thought of how things happen is the declaration that it's not happening now.
Of doubt. Yeah.
How's this?
Or
How's
putting
not
it
your
in-
job?
Yeah.
How's not your job? How's not your job? You know, you're the inspiration. God is the paintbrush and the canvas, and the paintbrush and the canvas is the how, right? So all you do is put it out. You know, whatever you ask in God's name is granted if you have faith. It does not say whatever you ask in God's name is granted if you can figure out how.
Yeah,
Right?
right.
It doesn't say that, right?
Sure.
So it comes back to this idea. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Even the thought of how something is happening. Can you finish that sentence again? That was so good.
Yeah. Well, you think about it. If I'm asking how it's going to happen, I'm declaring that it's not happening now.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And so it's like whatever you ask in God's name is granted. God's name is I am, not I was or I will be.
Right.
It's here in the now that we create, right? And I'll give you another example, another house story. This one will make you laugh. This is a funny one. I was going to be short on rent one month. I was going to be short $400 on rent one month. Thank you, God, for the unexpected income I am receiving. Amen. Now, notice what I just said. I said unexpected income. Right. Couple hours.
And you would only pray this one time because you don't ask. You don't even wait.
Well, and let's talk about the way I prayed it too. When you thank for something, you believe you're receiving it. So, hey, can I have a glass of water? You say thank you when the water is coming, right? Thank you, God, for the blank. I am, present moment declaration, also God's name, receiving, present moment action, not received or will receive. Amen. Amen means so be it. It means right here, right now, it's done. Everything I said was present moment. Everything I said was present moment.
And you think it requires patience then as well?
No, I don't think it requires patience as just letting it go. In fact,
Letting it go.
the concept of patience is a restriction on it.
It's still doubt. That's right.
Yeah. So I just go, what is that? And the less doubt you have, the faster it comes. And let me give you an example. Is this asking for unexpected income? 2 hours later, I walked out my front door. There was an envelope lying on the ground outside of my house. Not in my mailbox, on the ground outside of my house. I picked it up. I turned it over. It's addressed to me. I tear it open. There's a check inside of it made out to me for $400.
Incredible.
Just exactly what I needed, right? and this letter. Hi, John. This is Dr. Baziotis from the Urology Clinic. When we performed your vasectomy, we overcharged you by $400. Here's your refund.
Incredible.
Right. Now, the first miracle, of course, was that the doctor gave money back.
Right.
That's right. Never.
Never. The second miracle is that I only paid $600 for the procedure in the first place.
Oh man.
And he sent 400 of it back. Now, if you guys can tell me where I can get a $200 vasectomy, I'll go have a second one because that's a good deal.
That's right.
That
That's
is-
right. Give me a BOGO
Go on that one.
you know,
Just to make sure it takes.
Oh, I'm gonna use the BOGO line. But what did I ask for? I asked for unexpected income, and I never asked again because I just believed it was happening. If you have faith means if you believe it.
Yeah.
And so it's a matter of coming back to that. What you think you become, you create your world, right? But you can only think in the present moment.
So is believing basically just getting rid of all fear that another possibility is going to take place?
It's a very interesting question because I think that it's simpler than that. I just think it just is.
It just is. It's
Just
just the
is.
thing that is
Yeah.
happening.
It just is happening. Yeah, I am receiving this, and I could tell you so many things that I've created in my life that have been like just amazing how they happened, right? And I'll tell you some screw ups too. Right?
Mm.
I'm sitting here in my studio, which is a very nice studio. It's pretty well set up, got all my rigs and all that stuff. But right above my head, there's a stain on that ceiling, and there's a stain on that ceiling because a squirrel got into my attic. Right?
Okay.
I had it live trapped and taken somewhere and let free out in the nature somewhere. And I came in here with a can of Kills primer paint and a brush, and I sat there and I started painting across that stain. And as I'm painting, I glanced over and I saw on a table about 7 or 8 feet away was a brand new button-down collared shirt, black one. And I'm painting. I look over and go, "Oh man, I'm going to get paint on that."
You certainly did.
That second, a dot flew off that brush, flew a soft spoon, landed on the front of that black shirt. Right?
Be careful what you think.
That's right.
All I could do was laugh.
Yeah, right.
Laugh because I understand. I knew exactly what happened. Right? You know, you guys probably both know a negative person, right?
Sure.
You ever notice they always have something to be negative about?
Yeah.
That's because they believe the world is negative, and they see a negative world, right? I went into a restaurant one time with a guy, and walking into the restaurant, he says, "I hate this place. Why do we always come here?" I said, "What are you talking about? I love this place. It's the perfect greasy spoon." You know,
Yeah, that's
That's
right.
exactly what-
Sometimes it's what you need. Yeah, there
Yeah.
you go. Yeah.
And we're walking in. He says that we walk in. We sit down at our table. The waitress comes over. First line out of her mouth, "I'm sorry, I'm having a bad day, and it's going to reflect in your service."
Dang.
Literally what she said. I found it hysterical. I started to giggle. Right? That's what I do in life. Right?
Yeah.
The guy across from me was just angry. He was just angry about the statement. I turned to the lady and I said, "I'm so sorry you're having that kind of day. Why don't you sit down? I'll get you some dinner. I'll take care of the rest of your tables." And she started laughing and I started laughing and we started joking and we started flirting and we had a great conversation. And she'd go and she'd wait on somebody else to come back to me because I was making her feel good.
Yeah.
I was giving her the unconditional love that she was lacking in that moment.
Yeah.
This guy across from me was just angry. Right? He and I both ordered steak dinners with salads. Our salads came to the table. My salad, I swear to God, she handpicked every vegetable. Choir should have been singing when this salad hit the table because it was like the perfect salad, right? His comes to the table. It was the core of the iceberg lettuce cut into 4 chunks.
All right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
He's like, what is this? Well, sends it back, comes back out. It's now 8 chunks, right? What's your kitchen? She cut it a couple more times, brought it back out. Our steak dinners come. I ordered mine medium well. He ordered his rare. I cut into my steak. I swear my mom must have been in the kitchen because it was a perfectly cooked steak. Awesome, right? He cut it to the center of his. There was a thin line at the center of his that was still frozen.
Oh.
Right? So it was rare.
Yeah. Yeah. He
Right?
got it. Yeah.
He had a terrible meal. He had a surly waitress. He had everything he said he was going to get when he said, "I hate this place." I had a magnificent meal. I had a fun conversation flirting with a waitress. I got her phone number. I dated her for several months. We're still friends on Facebook.
Wow.
Right. So what happened? When I sat down at the table, there were 2 negative people. When I got up, there was 1. I changed the world.
Right on.
Right. And that's really the key is your job is not to save the world. Your job is to make your part of the world so bright that the world chooses to save itself around you. But understand the rest of the world, some of them might not choose it. That's okay. That's their choice. They're allowed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's incredible. I have a question I need to ask you. We've chatted with a few people, and I've seen a couple of documentaries. And this is a totally different direction, but about Jesus being in India for the last 18 years. Jeshua. I hope it's okay. I hope it's okay. I call him Jesus. It's
You
odd.
can call
Okay,
them whatever
right.
whatever
Yeah.
you want.
But just the speculation and Isa over at the ashrams and written about in books, and that one Russian guy in 1900 that put that forth, and I don't know, and I don't know. So I figured you might have an opinion on it, or a
Well, I did.
thought.
I actually do have an opinion on it, and I don't have any distinct memories of that.
Okay.
But I am more inclined to believe it than not. And that's because when I traveled in India, I studied about Sri Isa. And
Yeah.
and you go and they tell you where he went, they tell you what he did. They have the whole timeline of where he was when he did.
Right.
And then when you ask them what happened to him, they say he went back to his country and was crucified. Now, here's the part that most people don't talk about. They also believe that after the crucifixion, he came back with his wife and raised children there and died there.
Whoa.
Yeah. Now I'm going to bring you back to the moment that I talked about earlier with my face in the sand.
Okay.
Okay. So the next question people always ask me is, did he resurrect? I get that question all the time. Now,
Shoot. Right.
in India, there are story after story after story of gurus who come to a raging river. They can't cross the river, so they sit down, they project their consciousness to the other side, they manifest their body around them, and they keep walking. So basically, they resurrect their body on the other side of the river.
Sure.
Right.
Lots
So-
of stories like that.
Lots of stories like that.
Yeah.
Lots of stories like that. When I was months after the crucifixion, I had a memory of being back in Galilee, literally sitting on a boat talking to someone. I'm not even sure who it was I was talking to at the time, but we were just like deflated. And it was months after the crucifixion. We were back away from Jerusalem because we couldn't stay there. And we're like on this boat. We're not even really, present because we're so
Yeah.
deflated.
Distraught.
Oh, distraught.
Depressed. Yeah,
Yeah.
probably. Yeah, right.
And then the guy with me goes, and he jumps overboard. Now, biblically, this would be Peter,
Sure.
but I didn't know at the time. So I look over, and Joshua was standing on the shore. This is months after the crucifixion.
Wow.
And I get out, I get back, and I get out, and I run to him, and I drop on my face in front of him. And I look up at him, and he starts laughing at me. So that moment when I first saw him from the first psychic reading was after he was crucified. Now, that's the last memory I have of him. So I don't know whether he went back to India with his wife, but I do know he had a wife.
That's also a bold statement.
Yeah. And the reason I know he had a
Yeah.
The reason I know he had a wife is because he called her Ishti in my regression. And Ishti is Hebrew for wife. And this is what she looked like.
Oh, wow.
I painted that painting recently because I think it's important to get her face out.
Amazing.
She was absolutely a lovely, lovely person who laughed and joked and smiled. And I loved her to death, and he loved her with every part of his soul. They were the giddy couple that giggled until they cried laughing all the time. It was just a beautiful, beautiful relationship. And someone about 4 months ago, I'm one of those guys that because of the regression, there's a certain percentage of people who get regressed who continue to have spontaneous regressions.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you keep getting more memories or more,
I'm one of the ones that does. And usually what happens is somebody will ask me something and it'll trigger a memory.
Sure. Yeah, unlocks something.
Yeah. About 6 months ago, somebody said, what did Mary Magdalene look like? And I had this visceral memory of she and I together clearing a table, laughing so hard we were crying.
Mm.
And that's why I wanted to paint that picture, because I wanted people to see her face and to understand. And he literally did call her Ishti, which Ishti means wife. So I have to say that she was his wife.
Amazing.
Well, and then also, if you just look biblically, they call him rabbi. Now, in the Jewish tradition, to be a rabbi, you have to have a wife.
Oh.
So, because it's the male and female representation. So, to me, I look at it from, it's just he was a man who found his divinity and was showing us ours. At one point in the Bible, he says, "Take heart, I have overcome the world." You don't say "take
Mhm.
heart" to somebody unless those people are trying to get there, right? He literally is telling them they have the power within them. Ye are gods. Ye are gods, right? It always comes back to this idea that he was a man who found his divinity, and quite honestly, it's a better story than the messianic one,
Mm.
because it gives us hope that we can be it, as opposed to falling in line of subjugation.
It puts the power within.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is what the kingdom of heaven is within you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's all there. It's just a matter of interpretation. And unfortunately, the interpretation, the messianic interpretation, has made Christianity the deadliest religion in the world.
Mm.
And but bar none. The closest one is Islam, but Islam has a 1/3 the body count of Christianity. 1/3. If you look at the just the Iraq War with George Bush, right? 5,000 Americans died in that war. 1.5 million Iraqis died in that war. 1.5 million. Right? Their army wasn't
Veritable.
their army wasn't that big, right? But George Bush told the Saudi prince that God told him to invade Iraq.
Mm.
And South and Central America was wiped out by the conquistadors spreading Catholicism. Native Americans were wiped out by Protestants who were running away from Catholics in Europe who were persecuting them. So it became this religion that was nothing what he taught, which was love one another. Right?
Yeah, I think killing is not anything I've heard him do or endorse ever, to kill anybody. It's wild what's done
Yeah.
in that name. Yeah, it's crazy.
And you also have to remember, on a historical context, the Bible wasn't compiled until the 5th century, 500 years later. It was compiled from texts that the scholars believe were written somewhere between 70 and 200 years after the crucifixion by Greco-Roman Jews who were of Messianic belief. Right? So the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, all of them, were not written by apostles. Right? And then when you look at the New Testament, 27% of the New Testament is written by Luke. 23% is written by Paul. 20% is written by John. 13% by Matthew. And then the rest are all like single digits. And that poor little Jude guy got 0.33%. Right? But
One page. Yeah.
But who's Luke? It wasn't one of the 12. He was Paul's disciple. So 50% of the New Testament is Paul.
Right.
Right? Then you have John, the most esoteric book in the Bible, and it's the best darn book in the Bible. Thank you very much. I'm just joking.
Yeah.
But and then Matthew, Mark, and Luke, scholars are agreed all come from a single source text. They call it the Gospel of Q, is what they call it.
The Q Gospel. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So, but they don't think it was written by anybody that ever knew Jesus in lifetime, right? So all of these texts, and then of course, the New Age people grab a hold of things. In the 20s, when Qumran was being found and the Essenes were being found out, suddenly there was all this, oh my God, the Essenes were the people of Jesus. The only Essene writings we have is the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they never mention Jesus. They're Old Testament scrolls. So they're Torah scrolls. So they never mentioned Jesus. It wasn't until Madame Blavatsky in the late 1800s and the
That's right.
Theosophical Society started creating this
The gospel of
mythology.
peace, right?
God, and what's interesting about the Essene Gospel of Peace is it's the person who supposedly found it in the Vatican Library never produced images, never produced the Gospel. The Vatican
Right.
says it never existed. And the Gospel of Peace promotes the Theosophical views on vegetarianism,
Right.
right?
How amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
And there was the Gospel of the Holy 12 that came out claiming to be an Essene gospel, right? But then when you go back and you do the history, you find out that it was written by a Theosophical Society member who was a newspaper man, and it was a series of articles where they took the New Testament and added vegetarianism to it, and that's what created this. So the New Age is just as prevalent at creating texts to fill their need.
To fit the narrative.
Yeah, and people do that all the time. Everybody who's talking about the Bible right now, including me,
Yeah.
we're negotiating with the text of what it means, right? And the reason I am where I am is because I going back to the train analogy, I've lifted above the trains and I've looked at all the trains and I put my love goggles on and I started reading the loving parts of all the texts and I found all the commonalities in the loving parts. And when I looked at the fear-based stuff, they don't have commonality. That's the stuff of man wrapping around love. And so
That's right.
Have you been excommunicated from the church yet?
oh no, I wouldn't surprise me if they wanted to, but
You get a letter in the mail.
I'm too little. We're taking your secret decoder ring back. Right. I'll tell you who I get ostracized by is like people who are so devoutly Catholic that they can't say anything else. One of them being my brother. My own brother. The only thing he'll say to me every year is "Merry Christmas."
Oh,
That's so hurtful.
Oh, but you know what? I respect it. I completely respect it because my mom told me spirituality is a personal journey.
Yeah, right.
He's allowed to go down his personal journey, but I always go back to the book of Matthew where they talk about false prophets, and they say you will know them by their fruit. Right? For me, I've had loving conversations with Buddhists and Hindus and Baha'i and so on and so forth. The ones who are giving me sour fruit are the Christians. And so, and I don't think what they're teaching has anything to do with what Jeshua taught. So to me, they are the false prophets delivering sour fruit.
yeah.
Have you heard of Marconiism? Are you aware of Marconiism? Forget his name, Marconi. Yeah, but he essentially used it about 300, 400 AD, and he sort of put forth. He was eventually declared a heretic, but he had the idea around.
I'm a proud heretic, by the way.
Sure, yeah. He had the idea that basically the God of the Old Testament was not the God of the New Testament, and that Yahweh, because in the Old Testament it's hey, go kill everybody, and I'm a jealous God, and all of these things, and then it seems like Jesus' message. Yeah, Jesus's message almost or didn't contain any of that in any capacity,
Right.
and so he sort of put that idea forth and was eventually declared a heretic. What are your thoughts on Yahweh, the Judaic God? Yeah,
You want to hear a weird little history thing?
sure.
The only reason he's called Yahweh is because it looked like a Roman acronym. His actual name is Adonai.
Yeah. Interesting.
The Yahweh.
The Old Testament God.
Yeah, the Old Testament God was Adonai. Yeah. If you watch, there's the channel that I love to watch is a guy named Dan McClellan on YouTube.
Okay.
And he's a Bible scholar who debunks Bible rhetoric, basically.
Sure.
And what's so interesting about him, and I can't figure out how he can be a scholar and be a Mormon at the same time. Because the Mormons think that the Garden of Eden is in Missouri. How's that work?
Yeah.
So,
That's some questions. Yeah.
So, but he never lets his Mormonism affect his scholarly work, and it's gotten him in trouble with the Mormon Church because he's very specific because he studied ancient Greek, ancient Hebrew, ancient Aramaic, ancient Latin, and he actually breaks it down to the etymology of words, and he says this is not what they're saying. So this is not what was happening in the time, and he's it's an amazing channel. I highly recommend his channel. if you're really interested in breaking down that history.
Okay.
Um,
Cool.
but what's so interesting is when you look at the Old Testament and the New Testament, and they're so different because in the Old Testament they reference many gods. They actually,
That's right.
Abraham overcame
right.
the many gods, and so there isn't just one God, right? Now, during the time of Abraham, at the same time period, was over in Egypt. They were creating this new movement, the Amun movement, which is the one God movement, where Ra was the one God over all gods. At the same time in Greece, Zeus was becoming the one God over all gods. And so it was becoming this one God being more powerful than the other gods, right? King Tut, his name was Tutankhamun, Amun meaning one God, right?
Mm.
So there was this whole one God movement during the time of Abraham that was going on. And so it kind of gets filtered into. And by the time it gets to Christianity, they're just like, God is God at all, right? And then what I find fascinating is the contradictions you find, like you said. If God is love, like the Bible, like the Gospel of John says, there's a story in the Old Testament where he says God sent 2 bears to kill 42 children because they made fun of a bald man. Now, let me say, as a bald man, I'm okay with it. Right? I'm kidding, of course. But
I approve this message. Yeah.
yeah. I'm not just a member; I'm the president. Right. Um, that's not a bald head. That's a solar panel for a love machine. Thank you very much.
That's right. That's right.
Moving on. I tell people all the time, God doesn't cover perfect heads.
That's right.
So,
That's
uh,
good.
but the point is, so the inconsistencies in the text are because the texts are multiple texts. Dan McClellan says Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. We know they're coming from 2 different source texts and they're in the wrong order. They're in the wrong order in the Bible, which is interesting.
Mm.
And you look at the New Testament. How did Judas die? So
Yeah. And did he get hung? Yeah, he betrayed him and then got hung.
most people say, but yeah, most people say he threw his 30 pieces of silver down and he went and he hung himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the 2 stories in the Bible about how he died.
Okay.
In the other story, he took the 30 pieces of silver, he bought a farm, and months later, while plowing his field, his guts spewed all over the field and he died.
Yeah.
So is the Bible infallible?
Mm.
Hard to say. It's infallible at that point, right?
Mhm.
Walking on water story. There are 3 versions of the walking on water story in the Bible. The first one is the most famous one, Peter, oh, ye of little faith, all that. The second one is the John version, which I don't like at all. Basically, they invite Jeshua into the boat and the whole boat transports to shore. My favorite is the Luke version, where they're in a storm. They think they're going to drown. They're freaking out. They're scared. They're reacting to the experience and
Yep.
the stimulus around them. And Jeshua walks on by the boat casually, right? Basically showing all of the threats are in your mind. It's the fear that's affecting you, right?
Mm.
But the Bible has 3 versions. So which is the correct one,
Mhm.
right? So, and they'll tell you it's the univocal message of God, but it can't be univocal if it's written by many authors over many thousands of years. So, and on top of it, the Septuagint, which everyone talks about, that's actually the Hebrew Bible, which is the Old Testament and the Torah. That's the oldest version of that we have. The oldest version of the complete Bible is called the Codex Sinaiticus. And the Codex Sinaiticus is fascinating because they found it in St. Catherine's Monastery in Egypt. And when they found it, they're like, oh, this is amazing. They took all these images of it. They got every page of the Codex Sinaiticus has edit marks on it.
Oh wow.
And they've edited it for grammar and for context.
No way.
Yeah, every page. By the time you get up to the King James version, which everyone's into, right? Well, King James was a patron of Shakespeare. That's why you get all the these and the thous and the those, right? Thou shalt nots and all that stuff,
Yeah.
right? So it became Elizabethan English, or King James's version. It came from the Bishop's Bible. It was translated from the Bishop's Bible. But when they translated, King James himself said, take anything out of there that could be used against the monarchy. So every version of the Bible has been altered, translated, manipulated to fit the narrative of the person who's putting the Bible out. And so you can't take any of the Bibles as universal. So when somebody says the Bible is the inerrant word of God, I said, really, which one?
Which one? Yeah, that's right.
There's thousands of verses. Then the other thing is Paul, who is the New Testament guy, he was an apocalyptic preacher. He really thought the second coming was happening in his lifetime.
Right.
Which is why he told Christians that they should all be celibate, because there was no reason to have children. Right? So
Why he said that?
Interesting. Yeah, we'd all not be here if we all listened.
Right.
Yeah.
Because he didn't think we were going to be here anyway. He thought
There's no point.
He literally says that he's coming in my lifetime. Right. And so what's so interesting about that is the apocalyptic stuff that kept coming out and kept coming out, kept coming out. Do you know that documented there's been over 2,000 times the world was supposed to end?
Yeah.
The only thing they have in common is they've all been wrong.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right.
Every generation has thought the world is ending in their generation. Every generation.
Every generation. And that,
including this one.
Yeah. And now we're in this quick change of information, right? Like right now what is it? It's November, right? Go on YouTube right now. You're going to see all the psychics saying 2025 is going to be the year of catastrophe, the year of change, right?
Yeah.
But if you go back a year, they were saying 2024, the year of catastrophe, the year of change. Yeah. It's all marketing.
I've done that before, where I always see these predictions, and I got into a habit for a few years of every time I had one, I'd just copy the link and put it in a note and just put the date on it. And then every year you just remember, and I just go back and start clicking those links and they're all deleted. All deleted. And so I just was like, let's have some accountability here, at least in my own brain, of whether these predictions, it's easy to, there's a finance trick that I know that has been pulled off, where if you want to be a fund manager, actually, this is a student. There's a story of a student in a finance class where you have to make a little portfolio and you have to beat the market. And essentially what one of the students does is he makes 3 portfolios, and he makes one that's super aggressive, one that's super negative, and then one that's right in the middle. And then at the end of the semester, whichever one had the highest return, he said, that was the one I used, and he turned it on and he got a good grade because he just played all the sides. And you got to watch out. If, I can predict a million things and then delete all of them that were wrong and keep all the ones that were right. And I look great in hindsight.
There was a solar eclipse that happened in the U.S. this past year, and
yeah,
I was lucky because I was in the path of totality.
I drove to the path of totality.
And I was like my backyard with camera. I got all amazing shit. But everyone was talking about, yes, but this is the sacred triune, and this is happening, and this is happening. They're conjuncting, and I put out a video 4 days earlier. I said. This is what's happening, and this is my prophetic revelation. The day afterwards, we're not going to hear anything about the Lion's Cross or whatever they call it. I actually put out the prophecy that my prophecy was they're all going to cancel it.
It's all going to be fine.
Yeah, right. And I love what somebody else said. It's interesting how the prophetic eclipses are the ones that touch America.
How nice.
Yeah. And there's an eclipse on our planet every 18 months. So it's like the one that comes across America is the apocalyptic one, right? So years ago we had the Mayan calendar scare, 2004, right? And I used to say in speeches, I'd say, you guys want to know what's going to happen in 2012? They're like, yeah, tell us. And I'll lean forward. I go, the Mayan calendar is going to end. I said, but wait. You know what? I got something else to tell you. Last December, my other calendar ended. We're still here.
Yeah.
So to me, it's, we are creating our world, and you can create it beautifully. You can create it negatively. You can create it fearfully. But all of those things are fear-based. All of those are things are fear-based. And not only Jesus, but, and I'm using Jesus for you, my friend, Jesus and Yogananda, they both say, think not upon tomorrow, be here today. Tomorrow will take care of itself.
Mhm.
So somebody who's telling you the prophecy of the future, that's the first person I would unsubscribe from, because no one knows the day or the hour. Right? That's biblical too. Right? The future is not set. It's just a substance of potential waiting for us to believe, and that it's going to come into our experience and be shown to us as we believe. Can I find that in the Bible? And guess what? First lines, Book of John. First lines. In the beginning is the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Now, a Christian will tell you that means Jesus. Word means Jesus. I'm going to tell you it's your words, your thoughts, your beliefs go out to God. God shows you those words, thoughts, and beliefs in the image around you, and we are created in God's image. And it's a matter of now stepping into your divinity and declaring what you believe and believing it, as opposed to living into the stimulus of fear.
Do you think that there are angels and demons that are working on the plane of fear on this earth?
So I'm going to tell you, I do not believe that, but I'm also going to tell you that is a uniquely Christian construct.
Okay.
That is a
Or-
uniquely Christian.
Or other entities of any kind that kind of call
I
them
believe-
anything. Is it just
yeah, I believe kind of in line with what the Hindus believe. The Hindus believe that the consciousness of God is the Sit, and we are the Sit Sat Ki, which is the individual sparks of consciousness within
Yep.
one God. So do I believe that there are aliens? Do I believe in that? I think that it would be kind of naive to think we're the only game villain in all of this, right? So I think personally that we are the Sit Sat Ki. We are the individual sparks of consciousness in the one God. If I tied this into Christianity, I would go to the Trinity, right? Now now, first of all, Trinitarian belief didn't happen until the 4th century, so it had
Right.
nothing that Jesus taught. But if you think about the Trinity this way, you have the Father, the God consciousness, the Son, the physical world consciousness that's not aware of its divinity, and the Holy Spirit, which is your higher self, which understands its divinity and understands there's the physical world consciousness. I think that's where our intuition comes from. I think that's where our feelings come from. But you have to go back to that idea of feeling, because the Old Testament story of Adam and Eve, everyone misses the simplicity of that story. They ate from the tree of knowledge. They got kicked out of paradise. It got in their heads and out of their hearts. Right? They stopped feeling, because paradise for me is a beach. For somebody else, it's a mountain in North Carolina.
Sure.
right.
Yeah.
Appalachians.
There you go. Right. And so it's not the place, it's the feeling it engenders. So paradise is nirvana. It's a feeling. Right. And so when we get in our heads with the doctrines, the dogmas, the principles, the fear-based stuff, we're losing the feelings. We're giving away our power to others. We're living their life and not our own. Right. And it's a matter of coming back to saying, no, I am living a joyful, loving life, and making that waitress flirt with me so I can get her phone number.
That's awesome.
That sounds so ridiculously simple.
Yeah.
But it's, it's so true. I go to right at the corner of my road down here, there's a convenience store. And every so often I'll go in there, and someone will pull up and they'll get out of the car, and they'll look like a gangster, and they'll have the whole threatening demeanor going on, right? And I always smile at them, like, how you doing, good? And I open the door, they go, thank you, sir. And they walk. What you give, you get. That's what the meaning of karma is. It's not what the New Age version of karma means. It's not over lifetimes. It's what you give, you get. What you put out, you're getting back. And when I traveled through Egypt, everywhere I went, I was treated like a prince. I was welcomed into homes. I was there for a month. I was invited and had families. I met amazing people. I climbed Mount Sinai. A guy brought me. I was halfway up the climbing of Mount Sinai. I was an hour and a half up the mountain. The guy ran up from the bottom of the mountain to hand me his coat because he thought I'd be cold at the top. And man, that's how I was treated. Next day I ran into another American. He goes, hey, you been having problems since you've been here? I said, not at all. I've been treated like a prince everywhere I go. He said, everywhere I go, people want to fight me.
Yeah.
5 minutes later, I wanted to kick his butt. Not really, but
Yeah.
that he was getting what he was putting out, and I was getting what I was putting out. We are responsible for the world around us, and it comes with responsibility. we have the ability to respond in love rather than react in fear. I call it being an action hero rather than a reaction zero. You just have
Nice.
so you just stay in that space of saying, I am choosing in this moment to see their fear. And the easiest way to identify it is this way. You've got love, you've got fear. Right here in the middle is neutral, right? Right here is annoyed, right here is amused.
Mm-hmm.
All the positive sensations are on the loving side, all the negative sensations are on the fearful side. When they're coming at you fearfully, you could feel that feeling, right? So
Sure.
the job is to negate their fear, to negate their issue. And when I directed the Tennessee Renaissance Festival, I had a guy run up to me one time, stuck his finger about an inch from my nose, and he says, "You mother effer," but he didn't say effer. He said the whole thing, right? And the second he did, I exhaled, and I'll explain why in a second. Fully let the air out of my body, which takes you to complete neutral. Because when we have a fear response in this world, we have the fight or flight response, which makes us draw air into our lungs and hold it. It's a reserve, so we have the reserve to run fast. When you exhale, you tell your body you're safe, right? So he runs up to me, "Oh, you
Good trick.
mother ever."
That's
and I
great.
went completely neutral. Now, because I went completely neutral, I was not in reaction mode. I was in cognitive reasoning mode. I
Mhm.
can still think, because when you get into fear, you can't think, right? So I'm sitting here, I'm just listening to him, and he's saying terrible things about me and my mother. Right? He's just blah, 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 blah. And because I'm in that neutral state, I can say, what's he afraid of? What's his fear? And I just start listening to what he's saying, because our subconscious mind falls out of our mouth all day long, right? And I just start listening. I start realizing his only fear is he's not going to make enough money. That's the only fear he had, right? And he keeps lurching at me like a gorilla, trying to get me to react, because that's the primal thing, dominance, right? I just turned the other cheek and I stayed in my neutral space, right? I stayed right there. And then he ran out of things to say because I didn't feed it. And suddenly, out of the blue, he says, "Ah," he says, and he runs out of things to say. And I said, "Jerry, I'm so sorry you're having this experience. Nothing was done against you. How would you like to solve it?" Which is the laziest thing I could have said. Because basically I said, "You got a problem. I didn't do it. How you want to fix it?" That's basically what I just said, right? I said it nicer than that. He stormed off. 10 minutes later, he comes back. "John, I'm so sorry. I never should have spoken to you that way. I was disrespectful and I apologize. I'm so sorry." I said, "Well, Jerry, no, I like your show. I want to make sure your show is happy here. What can I do?" He said, "No, it's going to be fine. It's going to work out great." And I never had a problem with him again. But the key is that idea of turning the other cheek by not by letting, it's like spiritual Aikido. Somebody brings energy at you, you let it go by. You let it go. That's his fear, not mine.
Be water. Yeah.
Be like
Bruce
water,
Lee.
right? Bruce Lee, right? The other thing is Bruce Lee also said real emotional content, right? Real emotional content, which means fervent faith, fervent belief. So when I exhaled, when I came back to my neutral space, I fervently believed. I knew that without fear, nothing fearful could happen to me, right? There's a famous story of Swaminarayan. And if you don't know the story of Swaminarayan, he was a 13-year-old boy who reached enlightenment in India. And he's famous because he did a 13,000-kilometer trek to all the holy sites of India. And
Okay.
he dressed like Mowgli from Jungle Book. He always wore a little loincloth. And one day he wandered into a village. And I'm telling you this story, it seems like an ancient time. This actually happened in either the 17 or 1800s. So it's not actually that long ago, historically wise. And he wanders into this village, and the villagers are like, "Young boy, come into our home. We have a lion that's attacking people at dusk, and come into our home." And I said, "Okay." So they said, "Come into our home so you won't be attacked by the lion." And I was like, "No, I could think not me. It's not me." He was like, "No, I'm not going to come in. I'm fine." That's what he said. Swaminarayan. Suddenly, the next morning, they all come out of the house, and Swaminarayan is sitting next to a tree. At about 5 feet away, there's a lion asleep. And I asked him why the lion didn't eat him. His response was, because I'm without fear, he gave me nothing to be fearful for.
Yeah.
And I had a friend of mine who was an agoraphobic. She could never leave her home. And so being the person that I am, I used to go take her out to lunch. Right.
Yeah, sure.
I wanted to
Get her out.
Get her out.
Yeah.
Right?
Exposure therapy. Yeah.
Exactly. One day I'm driving to the restaurant. I hear from the passenger seat. She says, John, can I ask you a question? I said, yeah. She says, why do the cars on the highway merge easily with you? And I said, because I hate driving. Driving gives me love in return. And
It really is. It really is. Perspective is too light of a word, but it really is intention. It will change the reality you live in.
right. When she starts to drive, she's terrified of being out of her house. She's terrified
Yeah.
of being on the road. So she sees terrifying things.
That's right.
I love to drive, so I have a loving driving experience.
Yeah.
And I'm not afraid I'm not going to be somewhere fast enough. I drive sensibly, right? I just drive in almost meditative state for me. 9 times out of 10, if I take a long trip, I don't even turn the radio on.
I had a good friend. We started doing this in college, where we just said we were trying to love traffic. Like
Mhm.
we just, hey, how about we just, because you can't get out of it if you're in it, and you just got to be in it. So we said, why don't we try and start loving it? And so every time traffic would hit, we would start cheering in the car, and we'd start like
Yeah.
getting really excited because we're just like, oh my gosh, we're in traffic, yeah, and like you just kind of made it fun, and it made it
Yeah.
better. It made it interesting to be in traffic.
Absolutely. And now imagine if you just said, hey, this traffic is completely clearing up.
Right. Oh man. Yeah. Sweater.
Right. So I have a friend who has a pizza shop in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. It's a beach community. In summer months, there's millions of people there. My best friend owns a pizza shop that's 4 stores down from the boardwalk where the ocean is. I mean, it's like he's on the main street, prime location, right? And every year I go to Rehoboth with my son. And as we drive into town, I turned to my son. I said, where are we parking? He said, in front of Louis. For 10 years, I've parked in a parking spot looking in the door of Louis.
Incredible.
Right. And, you hear that in the law of attraction.
It sounds like magic. Yeah. Or the law of attraction, or, manifesting, it triggers a lot of that kind of connotations in some ways.
Absolutely. But if you think of the law of attraction and manifestation as just the marketing of creation, then you start to realize your thoughts are creating, like Buddha said, and like Krishna said, and like Jesus said, and like they all said, your thoughts are creating your experience. There's nothing good nor bad, but thinking makes it so. Shakespeare, right? He also said, words without thoughts never to heaven go. You can say something, but if you don't believe it, the words mean nothing.
Oh, interesting. Empty words. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it comes down to realizing that we do create our experience in all things. And I'll give you a really weird example. My son is graduating college in a year and a half, right? And I'm living in Ohio only because when my wife and I divorced, she brought my son to Ohio.
Okay.
So now I'm here in Ohio. They came here when he was 2. Now he's 21, right? I said, I am moving back to Rehoboth, moving back to the beach because I want to be back near the shore. So I've started declaring that that's happening, but I also declared it's going to happen in 2 years when he's out of college.
Sure.
I started putting my thoughts, words, and deeds into moving to the beach. I started packing things and getting rid of things and purging my house and all this stuff. Last week, I had someone contact me, offered me a house in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware.
Man.
Offered
Offer you a house?
Yeah. She
For
said, I don't want
free?
to rent it. I don't want to rent it, but you can live in it if you want.
For free?
Yeah. And I said, I said, really? Where is it located? She said, well, it looks right out on Silver Lake. Now, so what she said was, I look at the backside of James Brady's house, the guy who got shot with Reagan.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
It's multi-million-dollar homes there. Right.
Sure. Good location. You could say.
I never said where. I just said Rehoboth Beach. And now here's the weirdest part about that is I was offered that, and I was offered a small 2-bedroom trailer in the town just north of Rehoboth Beach.
Oh, okay.
So I got 2 options there, right? Right. So
Do you think that I would, one bucket this kind of classifies as maybe synchronicities, maybe, right?
yeah,
In sort of a way. Has this been following you your whole life? Or
sure.
has this sort of picked up once you kind of got into belief is the present moment? Or like you're being raised as Catholic, and like have these synchronicities kind of been a part of, I don't, and maybe because here's what one of my thoughts is, John's just a lucky guy. Like we
Yeah,
just meet people who are lucky guys, and they just,
yeah,
everything seems to work out regardless of what you believe or think or do.
yeah,
Man, everything's just working out for John. And like,
yeah.
what do you know what I
Do you know
mean?
what? Yeah. Do you know why everything works out for me? Because I believe it
Oh.
does.
Even, but were you believing it does in your early days, your
I
own?
did not believe it at all, and it wasn't working out for me.
Oh, okay, so you would say there was a difference
My
in
father
terms
was an
of,
alcoholic abuser, and I was the one
yeah.
kid. I was the one kid he didn't like.
Oh man. Okay.
I was the fat kid in school who got picked on by everybody.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
I was in school. I was a complete introvert because every time I opened my mouth, I got knocked down.
Mm.
Right. So I had a really rough childhood. But here's the weird part. You asked me earlier about the I have stuff like happen spiritually through my whole life. When I was a kid, I had imaginary friends I used to talk to, and I used to have out of body experiences. My brother was just the one who told me about that because I didn't even know I had. He explained me, say, "I'm taller than all of you. I'm on the ceiling. I can," and like literally, I was having out of body experiences. My mom walked out the back door one time when I was a kid, and my GI Joe was up on a crucifix. Right. So these are things that were happening to me as a child, but I wasn't aware of them. I was having a horrible life with an abusive father, right?
Okay.
So synchronicities happen like that all the time for every one of us.
Yep.
The key comes is when you start to become aware and start consciously creating, which is what
Mm.
Jeshua did and what Buddha did and Krishna did. When you then you start to see synchronicities as, like, for instance, if my tooth hadn't broken off, would I have ever said to her, my tooth broke
Right.
off?
Right.
Would she have ever told me that, all those things are in place, right? Now, all of us know someone who grew up with a silver spoon in their mouth, but they've been given the belief that they grew up with a silver spoon in their mouth,
Hmm.
right? And the people who grew up as a victim and believe in the victimhood, they're going to live a life of a victim until they choose to put that behind them. The Bible says this in two ways. You must become as a child to enter the kingdom of heaven, and you must be born again. Both of them mean go back to a time before belief, before you've had life experiences that have given you the beliefs that have altered your pathway. And so you go back to the blank page, and when you're looking at the blank page, you make a decision. Am I writing a comedy or a tragedy?
Yeah.
And I wrote a action comedy adventure. Thank you very much. And I
We,
have. I
yeah.
literally have.
And we were talking, Austin and I were talking yesterday about that, about how I find it interesting. I have a couple of siblings, and I know people with siblings and older siblings, and how sometimes, and now I have three kids, and I'm looking at them developing, and just how siblings turn out so different. And a lot of times you're like, well, you guys all ate the same food, you had the same parents, you lived in the same house, you went to the same schools, and I know there's years apart, and so maybe something's a little different, but by and large, it's a good test experience. It's a good, like, you're all kind of getting the same apples, and just how different everybody turns out,
Yeah.
even with all the, as close as you can get it, the same variables, and
My
just how
brothers,
good that is.
my brothers and sisters say all the time that we all had different parents.
Right.
They treated each one of us differently. My brother was a golden boy. My sister was a golden girl. My other sister was just kind of like hippy dippy on her own. She left early. My other sister was, my father called her the whore. And she ended up running off and going to Florida and basically abandoning the family. It was just like every one of us had a different experience. My youngest brother, 14 years younger than me, he was a little surprised. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was a little Catholic surprised what he was.
There we go. That's right.
But he he had a completely different relationship with his parents too. They were almost like grandparents by the time he was coming
Mm.
up. And he had a very different relation, a very different upbringing. And I think in some ways his was harder because he got in with wrong crowds and he just did crazy things. And now he's coming out of that into a beautiful, loving life and creating amazing things. But when he was younger, he tells me all the time, he says, all of my friends are dead. They all were overdosed or they all did, all kinds. And
Yeah.
everybody he knows, right?
Yeah.
So we all had these different experiences in life. And it goes back to that meal that I had, right? Your experience of life will give you a view, and those
That's right.
views will give you the outcome. My
I think they should also be, and I'm sure you have them as well, as stories at a company where, sometimes you think you're having a great steak and it does come out frozen, but you're kind of like, it's still how you look at it. You can still say, well, this is a terrible steak, or it can be like, well, this is an opportunity to speak to the waitress again and get her to refresh it, and it's not that bad actually, right? Like
right,
it's not just objective. What's out there should determine how you think about it, and because those do happen where you get the rent or you get the good steak and the salad, but also if that's your if that's your posture towards life, then regardless of what happens, objectively in one way, the steak could be well done or raw, and you should have that attitude anyways.
you should be. Buddha would call that lack of attachment.
Yeah, right.
But I'll tell you, the idea of, man, I really want this steak to be good, right? Well, you're going to get a bad steak because you want it. I am looking forward to. I am something ahead of me. I'm going to get a bad steak.
Yeah.
I haven't had a bad steak in 20 years, my friend. I really haven't.
That's amazing. Yeah, sure.
And when I've declared things into my life, I've been doing this for 25 years. So I usually start to see results of what I declare into my life in about 2 hours. So I start to see results of it. But
How do you know what to ask for? I mean, well, is there a thank you for
sometimes-
the $1 billion I am receiving?
Yeah, but,
And
but going back that statement, thank you for the $1 billion I'm receiving. Words without thoughts never to heaven go.
sure.
You're not going to believe $1 billion. I had a woman come on.
Mm.
Her biggest thing in life was money. She couldn't. I want to win the lottery. I want to do this. I was like, okay, we'll stop wanting. But then I'd say, okay, so what I need you to do is I need you to think of something that has absolutely no monetary value whatsoever. That's weird enough that if you got it, you'd know that you created it. She said, okay. I said, well, what is it? She said, well, I collect feathers, and the only feather I haven't found is a blue jay feather. And I've been looking for a blue jay feather. Now, I find them in my yard all the time because I have blue jays all around my house here. So I was like, okay, so declare that. She's like, I am receiving a blue jay feather. Great. Let it go. Email me when you get it. 2 days later, email. Oh my God, John, I found 14 blue jay feathers today. I didn't want to tell her that's because a cat got a blue jay because I thought it would ruin them all.
It becomes a problem with that. Yeah, right.
So I said to her, I said, do you believe you did that? She said, how could I not? I've been looking for this feather for 2 years and today I found 14. I said, okay, so here's what I want you to do now. Thank you for the penny that I'm receiving. And she transitioned into pennies. Then she transitioned into nickels, dimes, quarters, dollars. And the last time I talked to her, which was many, many months ago, almost a year ago now, she was actually finding $20 bills. But it wasn't about, she had to overcome her lack of belief that she was worthy of the money, or that money had some power over her that she couldn't get it, right? So I took her from something with no monetary value to a single penny to transition her into monetary value creation. And then she bumped it up, and she actually bypassed tens. She went from dollars to fives. She bypassed tens, going on that 20, and she's getting them, right?
That's an amazing story.
I haven't talked to her for a long time, but it's a matter of understanding that what you think you become, you create your world. But, I can be a 1,500-pound man, and I can't say I'm a thin man and believe it because I got shoes on. I just don't know what color they are. Right, they're down there.
Yeah, right.
I'm sure.
Right.
I'm sure. At least I hope.
I'm sure they're on there. Yeah.
Right. But I can be a 1,500-pound man and say I am receiving a healthier body, and start to feel a little better, and walk 5 more steps that day, and eat one less sandwich that day, and start to feel even better. My faith grows in the fact that I'm receiving a healthier body, and over the course of time, I lose, 1,200 pounds because I've created this belief that I am receiving a healthier body. I think of the universe as energy in motion, which is what Einstein says it is. Every atom is just an energy event in motion, right? And if in that room that you guys are in, look at the wall. The wall's made of atoms. The air between you and the wall is made of atoms. Your eyes are made of atoms. All you are is your consciousness. All these atoms is the illusion of your belief. It's a matter of, do you believe it's good? Do you believe it's bad? Or do you believe it's this? Or do you believe it's that? And when I look at this from the perspective of creating abundance, I never think about the limitations anymore, because I literally have declared for so long and have created so much. My faith is so big now. I don't think there's size in the unlimited, in the infinite.
Mm.
Right?
You have enough. Yeah, you've walked it. It's building. It's built over years and years.
But
Yeah.
and if you can believe it, I'll tell you a healing story, which will blow your mind. And then I'm gonna have to go pretty soon. But
Yeah. No, fair enough. Thanks for the time so far.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I was speaking at a Unity Church in London, Ontario, and I spoke to one day, and the next day they booked me into a building nearby, which was a former convent. And when I say former, I mean the nuns moved out like 2 days earlier. Right? You could still smell the incense in the building.
Wow.
All day long, people are coming in the front door and coming back, having private meetings with me, private sessions with me. Halfway through the day, a lady walks in the side door. She's got swelling the size of a grapefruit on the side of her face. Her teeth are pushing between her lips because of the infection all through her jaw. You can see the pain on her face. And my friend Holly says, let's go talk to John. And she comes back to the room. As she comes in the room, I say, what's your faith? What do you believe? She said, I'm a Christian. Now, I know I could talk a good Christian game. I went to 12 years of CCD. My mom had her master's degree in liturgy. I got that down, right? I said, the Bible says whatever you ask in God's name, it is granted. Do you believe that? She said, yeah, I believe that. So I said, so why don't we just ask? She said, we can ask? I said, is that what it said? She said, yeah. What do we ask? She said, how do we do that? I said, how about something like, thank you, God, for the perfect teeth I am receiving. Amen. She said, okay, let's do that. So we grabbed hands. Thank you, God, for the perfect teeth. And I watched her get more and more animated. We said it like 4 times because she just really needed to have that happen. After the 4th time, I said something to her that I said to you guys earlier. I said, when you thank for something, it's because you're getting it, that glass of water, right? I told her that whole thing about that statement being present moment, but I said it in a Christian way. I said, the Bible says, ask in God's name. And you know what God's name is? She says, no. I said, it's I am, according to Moses. And so you just asked in God's name to receive perfect teeth. And then you said, amen. And amen means so be it. It means right here, right now, it's done. What does that mean? She goes, I'm healed. Her swelling was gone.
Whoa.
Gone.
Blink.
Now, had she walked in that room and she said she was Buddhist, I would have said, Buddhist is what you think you become. Do you believe that? And I didn't go down the whole Buddhist route. Had she said she was Hindu, I'd have said, thought by thought you forge your destiny. You believe that? Had she said she was an atheist, I would have said, Einstein said, your imagination is the preview of life's coming attractions. Do you believe that? I'd have gone down whatever route she could put belief in. And I had the same result. Because that's
an amazing story.
It's her faith that heals her.
Right. I love that too, because it's not you. It's clearly not you.
Right. And if you there's a video on my Recovering Catholic channel called Jeshua's Healing Method. And it says exactly this. He was very good at bringing people to their faith and healing. And then people started to associate him with the healing. So they started to be healed around him because it was him.
It was just their belief in him, not him. It was that they believed, if I can just touch his coat, if I can just breathe the same air he breathes, then I will be healed. And it's enabling their own internal belief.
And that lady touched the hem of his garment, and he turned around and said, it is your faith that heals you. Right? So it really comes down to this concept of we are the creator of our experience in everything. Perfect health, perfect wealth, perfect romance, perfect love, perfect families, perfect home. You can create anything. And as the Bible says, you can ask a mountain to move and it'll move. Nothing is impossible for you. But if you believe it's impossible for
That
you,
was really good. Yeah.
then words without thoughts will not make it come to pass.
Yeah, me too.
Man, I think that's a good place to wrap up. This is you said a bunch of great things, and we're getting close to 2 hours.
Oh,
Yeah, this is
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
this is amazing, John. Yeah,
Way
what a
better.
great story, man. I have a million follow-up
Yeah.
questions. I can't believe we have to wrap up. Do you want to tell everybody where to find you?
yes, I am easy to find. John at johnofnew.com is my website. I'm most found on John of New YouTube channel. And if you just do the
It's
at
clever.
symbol with John of New behind it, it'll take you right to it. I also have a second channel, the Recovering Catholic channel. And so it's the same thing at the Recovering Catholic. And you'll find me online.
Man, that's great. Thanks so much for the time. I can't wait to do this again.
All right.
So many. My head's gonna be buzzing. So thanks, John. Appreciate it, man. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much. You guys have a great day.
Thanks, Sam. Take care.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.